All right, in today's video, I got a quick mind bender for you Christians out there. And I guess I'm not a Bible scholar, but I guess you Jews out there as well, since it's in the Old Testament. My question is it possible that solely based on the fact that you are watching this right now, you are in the Tower of Babel? Right? What was the Tower of Babel? Do you know what the Tower of Babel was? Do you know the story about the Tower of Babel? To me, the very, very, very short version of the Tower of Babel is people in some place that I couldn't pronounce when I looked it up decided that they could bypass Christ, essentially bypass the Savior, and build a tower to God, right? And the symbolism of the tower was the pride of the people and their belief that they didn't need a Savior, that they could do it themselves, right? We are self-made men. Look at this mighty tower we have built. We're going to make it to God. God comes in and says, I don't think so, and confounds the languages of the people, okay? What does that mean, and how the heck, or do you think that that's what he did? Did he come down and he'd be like, oh, you guys suck, and all of a sudden we couldn't understand each other, and we're wandering around, and we're totally scared and screwed, and that's it? Well, I had another idea that I think is a pretty cool concept that I want you to think about and maybe share and discuss. Pretend you're in church, right? Pretend you're in a nice chapel and you're having a normal conversation with other loved ones, okay? I don't want you to fight. I don't want you to come in here and shoot arrows or throw stones or try and light someone up or try and, beat someone down for a silly comment that you think or whatever. I just want to have an awesome conversation about the possibility that Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google are the Tower of Babel, right? This is our tech giant, our mighty attempt at being God, our mighty attempt at gathering all knowledge everywhere on the internet into a central few databases that are then controlled by a very few groups of people who are trying to be God, trying to tell us by censoring what to think, what to not think, who to believe, what this actually means, etc. Right? And then what happens when the people come in and say these things or whatever, right? What happens is we all start fighting. We're all fighting in our various languages of English, Spanish, whatever, right? But we're all fighting, trying to defend our positions and the reason that we can't understand each other is because we're not open. The pride to be right is forcing us to not hear the other person. So you and I are both speaking English, but if you are so far entrenched on your side of an issue, and I'm so far entrenched on my side of an issue, we will be screaming potentially at the top of our lungs, potentially fighting and throwing stones at each other simply because the other person won't listen. I'm right, they're wrong, blah, 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 blah. And what happens is eventually, based on this algorithm that they have created, designed to lock you into this building and never let your eyes off of your screens, and make sure to put your kids down in front of the screens so they can all be educated in the Tower of Babylon as well. So this Tower of Babylon and the confounding of the languages, I think, was an example of men bringing upon themselves their own condemnation, right? And we're all in here like a dog to its vomit and a pig to its wallowing in the mire. We're all in here continuing to go back into Facebook knowing that we're going in there for a fight, right? Someone comments, you're already in the middle of a back and forth with them. You are not opening up, generally speaking, when you're coming to it from an aggressive, fighting for your cause standpoint. Even if it is a good cause, I think if you're fighting for it, then there is cause to check yourself and at least examine what that cause is and the angle that you're coming from, right? So don't just be a pig to its wallowing in the mire. What does that mean? Pigs, I got one up there. I could flash a picture up here if you want of my pigs actually wallowing in a mire. They go back to it every single day. They lay down in the slop that they pooped and everything in. It's kind of gross, but at the same time, it's what pigs do. So are you going back to wallow in the mire and get in fights? Or are you going back genuinely trying to help people who are also stuck in the Tower of Babel figure out how to get out? Now, how do we get it out, right? Well, what happened at the Tower of Babel? I'm not sure. It's not a very detailed description as far as I have ever experienced or am aware. But essentially what happened is people got confounded. They couldn't understand each other. But my guess is, based on what's going on right now, what happened was people congregated together amongst common beliefs and people who they actually could understand because they were willing to accept and attach to their common beliefs together. I think we splintered into tribes. I think we splintered into people who had segregated themselves into groups who believed what they wanted to believe and constantly conversed about what they wanted to converse with, and then were guided away, or when it crumbled or whatever, they had to regroup together on the ground, looking back to the Tower of Babel as an example of pride, an example of whatever they were learning when they were in it in the first place. That's what it was for them. All right, so I just had a quick thought as I was watching this video. When I mention that we split into tribes, right, in the Tower of Babel, one of the ways to think about how that is an actual possibility as to what actually happened was you've got all sorts of religions that if you go look for the Tower of Babel, there's so many other religions that also have great buildings or great towers or great things that signify similar stuff. And so go look at how many people were in how many different rooms that were confounded and formed their little groups and formed their little religions. And perhaps that's where, think of it this way, all of the religions kind of splintered away from, or some of the religions splintered away. And so all of us are looking back at this Tower of Babel in our own little splintered religion. And we are seeing, when looking back, what we saw when we were there, right? So if we were all about the pride and becoming God and seeing the grandeur of the great and spacious building, right? Maybe that's our modern day capitalists. Then when it falls, we're not going to learn the lesson. What we're going to do is look back and be like, man, we were so close. Let's start again. And maybe this time we'll go over into Egypt and we'll widen the base and we'll make pyramids instead. And we'll have the slaves build them and blah, 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 blah. So you come along later in the Tower of Babel now, people who may have left the Tower of Babel when it fell and formed their little group and traveled over to Egypt. I have no idea biblically if this is how it works. I'm just speculating on things, whether it's the actual Egyptians or whatever. But we all splintered off into our own little groups. And then we form our own little religions, each of us looking back to the lesson that came from the Tower of Babel and learning something different from it, because we were always all seeing something different in it in the first place, and there with different motivations. And we're going to look back at that and try and learn something that supports the motivation and the reason that we were there in the first place. And therefore you splinter off into a bunch of different religions that then can conflict and fight and other things. So that's another thought. So, in today's world, BLM is like one room in the Tower of Babel, right? In this massive building, there's one room, and that's where all of the pro-BLM people are in there ranting and screaming, and sometimes that can kind of spread, and the noise from the music that's going on or whatever, right? Just stick with me here, is going upstairs and it's going downstairs, and people come up, what are you doing? And then you find out about Black Lives Matter, so you go down to your floor and you start fighting, and blah, 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 blah. And the next thing you know, part of an entire building is taken over with that cause, and a whole bunch of people who do understand each other and are congregating in that area speaking the same language. Different language for me, even though we're using the same dialect or however you want to refer to it. Same language, completely different room. Now transition that to pro-mask, anti-mask, pro-vax, anti-vax, pro-LGBTQ, anti-LGBTQ, pro-abortion, anti-abortion. We are all divided into our own individual, and some of us regularly visiting a bunch of different rooms in the building, but we're all divided on it, and we're all yelling at each other, generally speaking. In the algorithm, everybody's speaking the same language. Sometimes people are Spanish and English or whatever, but you're speaking the same language as someone, but no one can understand each other because of our pride. Our language has been confounded. And the only people that hear you in this great and spacious Tower of Babel are the people who are locked into your algorithm. What's an algorithm? If you don't understand what Facebook and Google and all of them are doing, they simply track every single thing that you even look at. You're scrolling on your phone. They know, based on human psychology, when you lift your finger and stop, whatever is at that spot right there on the screen, they know you're interested in that in one way or another. And then if you take it the next step and say like, they're like, okay, he likes that. And if you say love, they're like, oh, wow, okay, he loves that. And if you get, oh, then they're like, wow, he's surprised by that. And if they're like, then, oh, he's mad, right? You pick the emotion that you want Facebook to attach to that particular topic or that particular comment or that particular viral video. And now they know exactly what you are. So if you've heard scriptures about sins being shouted from the rooftop in the end days, we are all quite literally shouting from the rooftops our likes, our dislikes, our fantasies, our what are we searching on Google for. Everything is coming to light because we are all shouting from the rooftops saying, universe, God, whatever it is, this is what we want. Give us more. You want porn? It's everywhere. You want child porn? As disgusting as it is, it's everywhere. You want to stick your head in the sand and believe that it's not and focus on a different cause? That's great. What's your cause? The general rule, what it comes down to, I believe, is the first great commandment and the second great commandment. Are you coming from a position in your heart when you're inside this building having a conversation? Are you coming from a position that everyone can hear? And that position is, are you coming from a position of love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul? And the second great commandment, are you loving thy neighbor as thyself, which is a two-part thing. A, do you love yourself? Do you feel good about what you're doing? And C, are you trying to share that with your neighbor? Or are you feeling good about what you're doing from a pride standpoint and you want to prove your neighbor wrong? Ladies and gentlemen, it's quite possible that, like me, you are right now sitting in the Tower of Babel. And that's why nobody will listen to you. You think this is an interesting concept and you'd like to have an actual like normal conversation and not fight? I would love to have that conversation. So comment your thoughts. What do you think? And share this if you think other people might think it's cool or want to comment as well. All right. So that's what I've got for you.